Electric souls, when Edison's age sparked the science of the supernatural. Imagine stepping onto the streets of New York City in the year 1882. The familiar hiss of gaslights flickers weakly in the distance, casting their unsteady amber glow across cobblestone streets still slick with horse-drawn carriage tracks. But tonight, something unprecedented illuminates Pearl Street. Electric bulbs cast their steady, brilliant white light into the darkness, a light unlike anything humanity had ever seen before. This is the first commercial electric lighting system in America, and it represents far more than mere illumination. The age of electricity has arrived, and with it, a revolution that would transform not just our cities, but our fundamental understanding of consciousness, reality, and, well, the invisible forces that connect all living things. Thomas Edison's incandescent bulbs weren't just lighting up streets, they were igniting imaginations across the world. Here was an invisible force that could travel through copper wires, power mechanical devices, and banish centuries of darkness with the simple flip of a switch. To the Victorian mind, electricity seemed almost alive, a mysterious energy that defied easy explanation and bordered on the miraculous. It flowed like water, yet struck like lightning. It could be stored, transmitted and transformed, yet remained fundamentally invisible and honestly incomprehensible to most observers. The timing of this electrical revolution couldn't have been more perfect for reshaping human consciousness. The late 19th century was already an era of tremendous upheaval in how people understood their place in the universe. Darwin's theory of evolution had shaken religious certainties about human nature. The Industrial Revolution had demonstrated that ancient ways of life could be transformed overnight by new technologies. Telegraph lines were already connecting distant cities with near instantaneous communication, proving that information could travel faster than any horse or ship. Into this landscape of rapid change came electricity, the most mysterious and powerful force yet harnessed by human ingenuity. In an era when most people still lived by candlelight and gaslight, electricity felt genuinely supernatural. Unlike steam power, which involved visible fire, water, and mechanical motion, electrical energy was completely invisible, yet undeniably powerful. It was distant, yet instantaneous. You could generate it in one location and use it miles away without any apparent physical connection other than thin copper wires. This wasn't just another technology, it was magic made manifest in the everyday world. Public demonstrations of electrical phenomena became wildly popular entertainment throughout the 1880s and 1890s. Traveling lecturers would pack auditoriums with crowds who watched in wonder as sparks danced between metallic electrodes, as motors sprang to life without any visible means of propulsion, and as electrical current could be made to flow through human bodies without apparent harm. The famous showman and inventor Nikola Tesla became a celebrity, partly through his dramatic electrical demonstrations, where he would stand before audiences as electrical arcs played harmlessly around his body, his hair standing on end from static charge. These demonstrations weren't merely spectacle. They were proof that invisible forces could produce tangible, measurable effects in the physical world. This concept would soon find its way into entirely different realms of human inquiry, particularly the investigation of phenomena that seem to operate beyond the boundaries of normal physical law. If electricity could power a light bulb across town through invisible transmission, what other invisible forces might be operating in the universe? What other energies might connect distant objects or beings in ways that conventional science hadn't yet discovered? The psychological impact of electricity extended far beyond its practical applications. For the first time in human history, people were regularly witnessing the harnessing of an invisible force that could produce dramatic, visible effects. Lightning had always been mysterious and powerful, but now humans had captured lightning itself and put it to work. The implications were staggering. If invisible electrical energy could be controlled and directed by human will and ingenuity, what other invisible energies might respond to human consciousness? Victorian scientists and inventors weren't content to simply accept electricity as a useful mystery. They sought to understand its fundamental nature, leading to groundbreaking discoveries about electromagnetic fields, electrical resistance, and the relationship between electricity and magnetism. Michael Faraday's work with electromagnetic induction revealed that electricity and magnetism were different manifestations of the same underlying force. James Clerk Maxwell's equations demonstrated that light itself was an electromagnetic phenomenon, unifying electricity, magnetism, and optics into a single theoretical framework. These discoveries, created a new understanding of reality as fundamentally energetic rather than purely mechanical. The universe wasn't just a vast clockwork of gears and pulleys, as the earlier Industrial Revolution had suggested. Instead, it was permeated by invisible fields of force that could act across vast distances without any apparent physical medium. This energetic worldview would prove crucial to the development of psychical research, providing a scientific framework for understanding how consciousness might operate through similar invisible forces. As electric lights began illuminating drawing rooms and parlors across America and Europe, those same rooms were hosting an entirely different kind of electrical experiment. The late 19th century marked the golden age of psychical research, and it was no mere coincidence that this period of intensive paranormal investigation occurred simultaneously with the electrical revolution that was transforming daily life. The Society for Psychical Research, founded in Cambridge, England in 1882, the exact same year that Edison's Pearl Street station began operations, represented an unprecedented attempt to apply rigorous scientific methodology to the investigation of paranormal phenomena. This wasn't a gathering of credulous spiritualists or superstitious amateurs. The Society's founding members included some of the most respected intellectuals of their era: Cambridge professors, Nobel Prize winners, distinguished philosophers, and leading scientists who had made their reputations through careful, methodical research. Henry Sidgwick, the Society's first president, was a renowned philosopher and economist at Cambridge University. Edmund Gurney was a classical scholar and experimental psychologist. Frederick Myers, perhaps the most influential member, was a classicist and poet who would coin the term telepathy and develop many of the theoretical frameworks that still influence paranormal research today. These weren't fringe figures operating on the margins of academia. They were mainstream scholars applying their considerable intellectual resources to phenomena that conventional science couldn't explain. The Society's research methods were remarkably sophisticated for their era. They conducted controlled experiments with alleged telepaths, tested the accuracy of spirit mediums under carefully controlled conditions, and collected thousands of first-hand accounts of apparitions, premonitions, and other psychical experiences. They developed statistical methods for analyzing their data and published their findings in lengthy, detailed reports that met the highest standards of contemporary scientific literature. The parallel between electrical research and psychical research was, simply irresistible to Victorian minds. If invisible electrical energy could power a light bulb across town, transmit messages instantly across continents through telegraph wires, and even operate complex machinery through remote control, then why couldn't invisible psychic energy connect minds across distances? The metaphor here was more than merely poetic. It actually provided a compelling scientific framework for understanding consciousness itself. Telepathy, as Myers named it, seemed to operate according to principles remarkably similar to wireless telegraphy. Just as electrical signals could be transmitted between distant locations without physical wires, Psychic information appeared to travel between minds without any apparent physical medium. And just as electrical devices required proper tuning to receive specific frequencies, psychic experiences seemed to require certain mental states or conditions to occur reliably. The Society's investigators began developing theories about psychical energy that drew heavily on contemporary understanding of electromagnetic phenomena. They hypothesized that human consciousness might generate its own form of energy field, similar to the electromagnetic fields surrounding electrical circuits. Just as electrical fields could influence distant objects without direct physical contact, consciousness might be able to exert similar influences through its own energetic emanations. This wasn't idle speculation, it was actually serious theoretical work based on careful observation and experimentation. The Society's members conducted thousands of experiments with telepathy, clairvoyance and psychokinesis, documenting their results with the same precision they applied to conventional scientific research. They developed protocols for eliminating fraud and self-deception, created control groups and used statistical analysis to evaluate their findings. Perhaps no figure better embodied this extraordinary intersection of cutting-edge technology and supernatural inquiry than Thomas Alva Edison himself. The man who gave the world the incandescent light bulb, the phonograph, the motion picture camera and, countless other revolutionary inventions also spent his later years attempting something far more ambitious and mysterious, building a machine to establish communication with the dead. Edison's interest in spiritual matters wasn't a late-life eccentricity or the folly of an aging inventor losing his scientific rigor. Throughout his career, Edison had consistently pushed the boundaries of what was considered scientifically possible. He had successfully captured and reproduced sound with the phonograph, creating what many initially considered impossible, a machine that could preserve human voices for posterity. He had harnessed electricity to create practical illumination, transforming the fundamental rhythm of human daily life. And he had invented motion pictures, creating the illusion of life and movement from still photographs. In interviews during the 1910s and 1920s, Edison spoke openly about his belief that human consciousness represented some form of energy that might persist beyond physical death. If energy could neither be created nor destroyed, as the first law of thermodynamics stated, then perhaps the energy that constituted human consciousness might continue to exist in some form after the body's death. This wasn't mystical speculation. It was actually the logical extension of scientific principles to questions about the nature of consciousness and survival. Edison approached the problem of spirit communication with the same systematic methodology he applied to all his inventions. He believed that if human consciousness operated according to natural laws, as electricity demonstrably did, then it should be subject to technological detection, amplification and manipulation. His proposed spirit phone was intended to provide a technological interface between the world of the living and whatever realm might be inhabited by discarnate consciousness. The technical details of Edison's spirit communication device remain largely mysterious, as he never published complete specifications or demonstrated a working model. However, contemporary accounts suggest that he envisioned some form of extremely sensitive recording and amplification system that could detect subtle energy emanations from spiritual entities. He speculated that spirits might be able to influence delicate electrical or mechanical apparatus in ways too subtle for human senses to detect directly, but which could be amplified and made perceptible through appropriate technology. Cultural historian James Burke has provided invaluable insights into how human understanding consistently operates through metaphors drawn from the dominant technologies of each historical era. This process of metaphorical thinking isn't merely poetic or decorative. It fundamentally shapes how entire civilizations understand themselves, their minds, and their place in the cosmos. The shift from mechanical to electrical metaphors during the late 19th century represents one of the most profound transformations in human self-understanding in recorded history. During the Industrial Revolution, people naturally conceived of the mind as a complex but comprehensible machine. The brain became a mechanical calculator, processing inputs and producing outputs according to predictable mechanical principles. Thoughts were understood as the movement of mental gears and levers. Memory was conceptualized as a storage system of mechanical components. But electricity changed everything in the most fundamental way imaginable. Suddenly, the human nervous system wasn't just biological plumbing. It was revealed to be an incredibly sophisticated electrical network, transmitting signals at lightning speed throughout the body. The brain wasn't merely a mechanical calculator. It was discovered to be an electrical generator, producing measurable electrical activity that could be detected and recorded. This discovery revolutionized understanding of human physiology and psychology. Thoughts weren't just the output of mental machinery. They were electrical impulses racing through neural networks at incredible speeds. Emotions weren't merely mechanical responses to stimuli. They involved complex patterns of electrical activity that could be influenced by electrical interventions. The implications extended far beyond physiology into every aspect of human self-understanding. If consciousness operated electrically, then psychic phenomena weren't supernatural violations of natural law. They were simply applications of electrical principles that science didn't yet fully understand. Telepathy became a form of biological radio transmission, with minds serving as both transmitters and receivers of psychic energy. The séance room became reconceptualized as a laboratory for investigating the electrical properties of consciousness. Modern esoteric scholar Mitch Horowitz offers a compelling framework for understanding the psychical research movement of the late 19th century. Rather than dismissing these investigations as pre-scientific superstition, Horowitz argues that these pioneering researchers were engaged in what he terms co-creative exploration of reality, the radical hypothesis that human consciousness doesn't just passively observe the universe, but actively participates in shaping the fundamental fabric of existence itself. This perspective completely reframes the entire enterprise of psychical research. The investigators weren't just testing whether psychic phenomena existed as objective features of reality. They were exploring whether human consciousness itself could influence the basic structure of physical law through mechanisms that conventional science had never considered. So, Horowitz's co-creative hypothesis, well, it draws on insights from quantum mechanics, consciousness studies, and, decades of careful analysis of psychical research data. He argues that the most significant psychical phenomena occur not through the operation of unknown energy fields or spiritual forces, but rather through the direct interaction of consciousness with the probabilistic structure of reality itself. The co-creative hypothesis actually explains why psychic phenomena appear so elusive and, honestly, difficult to replicate reliably. If consciousness influences reality through quantum-level interactions, then psychic effects would, quite naturally, be subtle, statistical, and highly dependent on the mental state and expectations of both experimenters and subjects. The marriage of electrical metaphors and consciousness research during the late 19th century left permanent marks on both science and spirituality that continue to influence contemporary thought. Modern neuroscience still relies heavily on electrical models for understanding brain function. We measure neural activity through electrical patterns using EEG and other technologies. We treat various mental conditions with electrical stimulation. Meanwhile, popular spirituality continues to draw extensively on electrical metaphors developed during the Victorian era. Contemporary discussions of energy healing, vibrational frequencies, and electrical chakras represent direct descendants of 19th century attempts to understand consciousness in electrical terms. Quantum mechanics, discovered in the early 20th century, provided new scientific frameworks that seemed to validate some of the insights of Victorian psychical researchers. The observer effect in quantum mechanics suggests that consciousness does indeed play a fundamental role in determining physical reality. Quantum entanglement demonstrates that distant objects can be instantaneously connected in ways that transcend classical physics. Today, as we stand on the brink of new technological revolutions, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, brain-computer interfaces, and virtual reality, we face remarkably similar questions about consciousness and its relationship to the physical universe. Just as electricity provided our Victorian ancestors with new metaphors for understanding mind and spirit, our current technologies are generating new frameworks for exploring the deepest mysteries of human consciousness. Brain-computer interfaces are making it possible to detect and interpret neural signals with unprecedented precision, raising new questions about the relationship between electrical brain activity and subjective experience. Artificial intelligence is forcing us to reconsider fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness itself. If machines can exhibit apparently intelligent behavior, what distinguishes human consciousness from artificial information processing? The psychical researchers of Edison's era may not have proven the existence of telepathy or spirit communication in ways that satisfied skeptical scientists, but they established something equally important: the principle that consciousness itself deserves rigorous scientific investigation. They demonstrated that the inner life of the mind could be approached with the same methodical precision applied to any other natural phenomenon. Here's what fascinates me most. We're living through the exact same process right now, just with different technologies. Just as Edison's generation used electricity to completely reimagine consciousness and human potential, we're using artificial intelligence, quantum mechanics, and neural interfaces to ask the same fundamental questions that have haunted humanity for millennia. Think about it. Every major technological revolution has forced us to reconceptualize what it means to be human. When we invented mechanical clocks, we started thinking about the body as a clockwork mechanism. When we built steam engines, we began understanding metabolism as combustion. When we developed computers, we started describing the brain as an information processing system. Now, as we create artificial intelligences that can write poetry and solve complex problems, we're forced to ask, what makes human consciousness special? What invisible forces do you think we're overlooking in our current technological moment? Are there modern electrical metaphors shaping how you understand your own consciousness? When you interact with AI systems, use virtual reality, or carry a smartphone that responds to your voice commands, how does that change your sense of what consciousness is and what it might be capable of? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Some of the most mind-bending insights about consciousness and technology come from unexpected connections that readers make. I'm particularly curious about your experiences with technology that seems to anticipate your needs or respond to your intentions in ways that feel almost psychic. If you're digging this journey through the hidden history of consciousness and technology, there's so much more coming. Next week, we're diving into Part 5, Quantum Souls, how the discovery of quantum mechanics in the early 1900s gave birth to an entirely new model of psychic phenomena. We'll explore how physicists like Wolfgang Pauli secretly collaborated with Carl Jung to investigate synchronicity and meaningful coincidences, and why quantum entanglement became the new scientific foundation for understanding telepathy and other psychic abilities. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it, and if this sparked something for you, share it with someone who loves diving deep into the weird intersections of science and spirit. These stories matter because they show us that the boundaries between technology and consciousness have always been more fluid and mysterious than we imagine. Until next time, keep questioning the invisible forces that shape our world and our minds. Sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we're brave enough to investigate what seems impossible, armed with the best tools and most rigorous methods our era can provide.